ice equipment. In this lesson, we'll be taking a look at all of the different items of equipment that you'll be using when working behind your bar with ice. The reason for this is because ice is one of the most important ingredients in any bar. It is used in almost every situation and is critical for the vast majority of the drinks that you send out. This means that we need to have a very good understanding of the equipment that we'll be using when working with ice. We will be learning about the ice scoop, the ice crusher, ice tongs, ice buckets, the ice well, and ice shaping equipment. We'll be taking a more detailed look at ice buckets and how to prepare them later on in the course. Now let's look at the ice scoop. The ice scoop is a tool that is used to scoop up ice. It has a handle and a type of bucket on the end of the handle, which is what scoops the ice. The main reason for having an ice scoop is so that you don't use a glass to scoop out ice from an ice bucket or ice well. Using a glass to scoop ice can very easily result in glass chipping, and this is very dangerous if that shard of glass were to make its way into a guest's drink. For this reason, make sure that you only ever use an ice scoop when you are handling ice. Not only is it the easiest and safest way to handle ice, it is also the most hygienic way. Now let's look at the ice crusher. The ice crusher is a tool that is used for crushing ice blocks into smaller chips of ice. These smaller chips are then used to give drinks a different texture to full cubes. They bring about a slushy texture to any drink that they are added to. A common ice crusher is made up of a few separate elements, depending on the type. Having said this though, all ice crushers have a base or bin where the ice is placed. Then, when the ice is placed into this compartment, there is usually a handle on the ice crusher, which can be rotated to begin crushing the ice. Lastly, if you don't have an ice crusher, you will be able to use a muddler, a mixing tin, and a service cloth to crush the ice. However, this is quite a difficult and noisy task to perform. We will take a more detailed look at exactly how to do this later on in the course. Now let's move on to ice tongs. Ice tongs are an ice tool that will be used by your guests, as they allow them to handle single blocks of ice without having to use their hands. See if you can think of 2 reasons why ice tongs are useful for guests. Firstly, if there were no ice tongs, guests would have to handle ice with their hands, which would not only make their hands uncomfortable, but would also cause the ice to melt quickly. Secondly, handling ice with your hands is also unhygienic, as germs may transmit from your hands onto the ice. An important detail when it comes to ice tongs is that every time a guest orders ice to add to their drinks, whether it goes in a small ice bucket or in a separate glass, ice tongs always need to accompany these. If you don't have ice tongs, you can use a tablespoon instead. Next, ice buckets. Ice buckets are exactly what they say they are: metal buckets which are used to hold ice. When it comes to bars and service, ice buckets have 2 main functions. Firstly, they can be filled with ice in order to keep bottles of wine and sparkling wine cool. Secondly, when guests order plain ice for aged spirits or white wine, the ice must be placed in a small ice bucket and then sent out along with the spirit to the guest. We will be taking a more detailed look at ice buckets and how to prepare them later on in the course. Now let's look at the ice well. The ice well is a deep sink where large quantities of ice can be kept so that you can have a large, easily accessible supply of ice when preparing your drinks. What do you think needs to be used each and every time you want to fetch ice from your ice well? The correct answer is the ice scoop. Finally, let's look at ice shaping equipment. Ice, as you know, is one of the most striking and versatile ingredients in the bar. innovative use of ice will be able to completely transform the look of a drink, in the way that a beautiful garnish or piece of glassware can be considered a piece of art. Using ice shaping equipment, you will be able to create ice shards, chips, shapes, and even impressive ice balls. There are a number of pieces of equipment used to shape ice. Similar to the way that ice sculptors create breathtaking ice displays and designs, you, as a barman, can use ice to create stunning artistic visuals. Most commonly, barmen will use an ice pick on large blocks of ice to chip off shards of ice. For more accurate shaping, for instance in shaping an ice ball, a large knife will often be used. Here you can see how a scraping device can be used to make intricate carvings in ice that will add magical detail to the drinks in which it will be placed. Using equipment like picks or knives on blocks of ice can be quite tricky if you're not experienced, as ice becomes slippery and the tools you are using are sharp. When using an ice pick or knife to separate shards off a large block of ice, always make sure you anchor the ice block on the surface by placing it on a service cloth laid flat to prevent slippage. It is recommended to use gloves to help you to hold the ice firmly. Use the pick or knife to create a groove on the ice. Then insert the pick or knife in the groove and tap firmly on the tool, and the shard should separate cleanly. In a similar way, using a knife on a square block of ice, you will be able to work at the sharp edges, rotating consistently to check that your ball begins to take a uniform shape. In this way, you will slowly form a beautiful ice ball, which will really amaze your guests. Unique ice shapes, shards, and ice balls are a wonderful way to create very special effects in your drinks. In this lesson, we learnt about the ice scoop, the ice crusher, ice tongs, ice buckets, the ice well, and ice shaping equipment. Well done, and enjoy the next lesson.